welcome, Charlie Sykes.
Well, happy birthday. I feel honored that you'd talk to me on such a special day.
I am a big fan of yours, and I find you to be, even though we don't agree on a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
we agree on some important stuff. Okay, but now we're going to have the moment of Schadenfreude for my birthday. 10 Trump-endorsed candidates that have already lost in 2026. And they
Oh,
include, I'm not going to read, but an Iowa governor, Georgia governor, South Carolina, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Wyoming, Texas, a ton of governors, an AG, and then a bunch of congressional seats. Does this mean Trump does not have the power he used to have? And
yes. Go
yeah,
on.
and I
And
want you to also get to why are Republicans still so terrified of him?
well, I mean, at least at one point they were terrified of him because, one true social post could end your political career. Trump's endorsement could turn a race around. Trump's blessing could push forward a candidate that would otherwise have been dead man or dead woman walking. That's clearly no longer the case. However, I guess I would like to share the Schadenfreude with you. But the reality is that even the candidates who win over the Trump endorsed candidates are still pro-Trump. There
Right.
are no anti-Trump candidates running. We're not
Right.
dealing in a year in which there's a serious debate within the Republican Party. Should we go along with Donald Trump? Should we not
Right.
go along with Donald Trump? I can't think of any prominent Republican who's on the ballot who is actually broken with Trump on the corruption, on the war, on the economy,
Right.
on any of these things. So basically, you have Trump heavy, Trump medium, Trump light, but they're all Trumpists. So yeah, maybe there's not a magic Trump touch anymore, but I don't think that we ought to underestimate how thoroughly magnified the Republican Party remains.
Right. I think that's a really good point. And as someone who gets very into optimism,
Yeah,
it's really important to remember that this is still, in 2016, there were not never Trump candidates
yeah, they
running
were.
for office, and they're gone.
Right. I mean, we don't have a Chris Christie, you don't have a Jeff Flake, you don't have a Mitt Romney, you don't have any of those candidates. There was once an open debate about all of this, that you would have somewhere in America some Republican candidate running in the primary who was running in opposition to Trump's Iran war. Now you have, Tucker Carlson out there, but he's not actually running. So we're not at that Republicans after Trump phase quite yet,
Yeah.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to say.
Well,
Well,
and it does.
I'm not sorry to say it because this means that going into the midterms, there are no Republicans who have any reasonable ability to distance themselves from what Donald
Right.
Trump is doing and what
Right.
he's saying. I mean, they
Right.
bought this ticket. They are on for the ride all the way through. And, just was it last week we saw Republican senators who knew better decide to cave into Donald Trump once again and vote to confirm Todd Blanche. So we still live in Trump's Republican America.
And Todd Blanche then immediately did a political rally
Mhm.
where and went on television and said that in fact
Right.
independence is not the job of the DOJ, which is preposterous and also insane.
Well, and dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this idea, though. Trump has been disappointed by the primary voters. And I think it's pretty interesting, especially when you look at race. Like we're seeing this phenomenon. I think of Corey Mills. So Florida
Yeah.
was last night. Corey Mills was another scandal plagued like a Max Miller. And Corey Mills had this situation where he got a Trump endorsement and then it looked like he was really going to lose. So Trump didn't unendorse, he
Yeah.
just backed away. Talk us through
Right.
that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Donald Trump hates being a loser more than anything in the world, right? So, I mean,
Right.
if it doesn't matter how loyal you've been to him, how much you supported him, the moment that Trump senses any weakness, he's going to throw you under the bus. Now, Corey Mills is in many ways a special case. He was so loaded and larded with scandal, sexual abuse, affairs. He's being investigated by the House Ethics Committee. He's been accused of stolen valor. I mean, this guy had scandals jumping off him like bugs. So the question would be has Trump managed to degrade the issue of character to the point where that doesn't matter at all? Well, in Florida, turns out to matter enough to get rid of Corey Mills. He's still sort of in with Max Miller because look, I mean, for Donald Trump can never say that sexually abusing women is disqualifying, can he? I
I
mean,
can't imagine why he cannot say that, but he can
yes.
bring his E. Jean Carroll case to the Supreme Court yet again to have them say
And,
no dice.
and he can lose once again with
Yet
the
again.
Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And so this is something that every once in a while I think we ought to take the opportunity to remind ourselves that this is the man who's sitting in the Oval Office is a convicted felon, the first time anyone has ever been a convicted felon elected to that office, who also has been found liable for sexually abusing and then defaming a woman. And that verdict has been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. You would think that would send some ripples through the American political system or the Republican Party. It's notable that as you and I are speaking, nothing has one Republican said, you know what? I'm going to draw the line at sexual assault. I'm going to draw the line at sexual abuse. So this is why it's awkward. If you say that, gosh, we can't support Max Miller, guys, have you noticed who your president is and what he says on a daily basis?
And I think it's interesting that they say it's not that they're not supporting him because they're better than that. They're not supporting him because they don't think he can win, which is a certain kind of, they're making a certain kind, I mean, obviously it's a calculus, but it's a confession a little bit.
Oh, it's very much a confession. And I think this is where it does actually matter that Democrats did clean their own house in
Right.
Maine. And there's a reason why Eric Swalwell is not still in Congress. And I
Yeah.
know that there are people who say, no, if they have no standards, we should have no standards either.
Right.
But it's at moments like this where you go, okay, this is the Republicans are a political party that is behaving completely differently on these issues. And the allegations are again, horrendous for these guys. So Donald Trump was not able to save Corey Mills in the primary, and I think he's unlikely to save Max Miller in the general election.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's wishful thinking.
I mean, Max Miller, the allegations against him, violence towards his wife, violence towards his
Yes.
2-year-old daughter. I mean, just a pretty atrocious situation. Um, I would love to talk about this interesting story in Axios for a minute with you. So basically, he has hit the Republicans who strongly approve of Trump. That is MAGA. Those are the people who wear the t-shirts and go to the concerts. His performance with that number has dropped by 20 points from 68% to 48%. Can you explain to our listeners what the importance of those strongly agree voters?
Well, those are the people who are going to crawl through glass to vote, walk through fire. Those are the people who are with him, no matter how corrupt he is, no matter what he says, who actually seem to delight in the more outrageous, the more brutal that he was. But what you are seeing is the kind of erosion that frankly we haven't seen before. And I think this is part of the difficulty of 10 years of Trumpism to separate the signal from the noise. And there've been a lot of times when people have said, well, is MAGA cracking up? Is he losing his grip? That's the number that suggests that there's real fatigue setting in. And it's because I think Trump, as I've said before, has become increasingly tone deaf, completely, increasingly indifferent to his own base. I mean, this is a guy that put together a rather impressive coalition, I grudgingly admit, on a populist message that, he was the voice of the forgotten man. And what has he spent his second term on? Ballrooms, reflecting ponds, corruption, enriching himself, an endless, pointless war in Iran, forcing higher gas prices, reigniting inflation, spooking the hell out of the bond market. And at some point, there is going to be a certain amount of political gravity. And there's been a time when we wondered whether that would ever happen because what he had created was more like a cult than a political party. The cult remains, but it's a shrinking cult. And that's important.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about this idea. And again, I think this is interesting. This idea that we've seen in the primaries, and a lot of the people who were very involved in the 2016 resist Trump movement get not rewarded by voters. Right. Vindman was last night.
Alex Vindman.
We saw Dan Goldman lost his seat. We saw there have been a number of, there was a member of Congress who was an impeachment manager who lost her seat. We've seen just a lot of that. I wonder if you could tell me, do you think that is a coincidence? Do you think that's a relevant theory? What do you think?
Well, I think each one of those cases is different. Okay,
Right.
so I'm I admire Alex Vindman, extremely. I mean, he laid his career and his life on the line when he testified against Donald Trump when he was a whistleblower during the Trump first impeachment. The man has courage, the man had integrity, but ultimately, those things don't necessarily mean you're going to be a good candidate in an election the size of Florida. And you have to be a good candidate and you have to run a good campaign. And I think you could make the case that Alex Vindman, as admirable as he is, and I don't want, not dissing him in any way, I'm very disappointed by
Right.
that, was not an optimal candidate and did not run a very good campaign
Yeah.
under the circumstances. But I do think it's worth highlighting the fact that people like Dan Goldman were defeated in the primary, because I think there's a misapprehension that a lot of this insurgent from the left is about looking for people who will fight Trump more, who will stand up with Trump. I'm getting the sense that it's not about that at all, that it's about people
Mm.
who have their own ideological agenda, want to scratch their ideological itch, and are more concerned with attacking other Democrats than they are with actually winning general elections or beating Donald Trump. Because, you think about a lot of these people that are now, is this person the future of the Democratic
Right.
Party? Well, you know what they were doing in 2024? A lot of these folks were sitting out the election. Were saying that they didn't see a difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, that's a key moment. And I frankly do not want to be lectured by people who did not see a difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, now saying that we need to rally around them because they will be the fighters against Donald Trump. So, I mean, I do think that sometimes there's a confusion of the categories here.
I mean, I'm gonna push back a little bit, which is to
I was hoping you
say
would.
I think I think that there may be candidates like that. My sense is I still think in the races where and we can talk let's talk about the Angie Nixon Alex Vindman
Okay. I mean,
because she won definitively. And again, it's a red state and it's only gotten redder and the voter, but David Jolly is a kind of candidate who could win for governor in a red state. So there's that, and he's on the ballot. So the question is, does the Senate candidate affect him and how? But in my mind, what I saw when I saw her on Morning Joe this morning, and again, this was a race that was not on anyone's radar because
no, it was
it
not.
was not polled, right? There was no polling, which is in itself, when one candidate has raised more than $10 million,
Yeah.
kind of insane, right? There was no polling, and she was really thought of as an
Yeah.
insurgent. One of the things I was struck by was the message is not fight Trump, right? It's not like in 2016, you had candidates who'd say, we want to go back to normal. We want to get the
Right.
status quo back. And because we're so
That's done.
far into
Yeah.
economic inequality, voters, that's not enough for them. And so they want more. And I mean, again, I don't know enough about her, and I know she did it. But one of the things that I know from her time in the state house was that much of what she ran against was actually DeSantis, right? She did these
Right.
like protests on the floor against DeSantis. She was very loud against DeSantis. Again, I don't know. I don't know how that plays into general, but I'm struck by the idea that that is not enough. That the lesson that voters have come from 2016 with, like, you can't just not be Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, obviously that's true, but the problem is that well, don't take my word for it. Larry Sabato's crystal ball
Right.
this morning
No, it moved the
moved
race. Yeah.
Florida from likely
Yeah.
Republican now to solidly Republican.
Yes.
So Vindman was unlikely to win that. I think he had a shot to at least force the Republicans to spend a lot of money.
Right.
I don't think she's going to be bringing in that outside money. There's a bright spot there. Democrats won't necessarily be squandering $50 million on a losing cause there. But I also think that, and I'm concerned about it feeding the narrative. So anyway, I don't think she's going to win. I hope she does not drag down David Jolly. My main concern is that in 2028, the Democrats are going to have to make a decision. Do they nominate a candidate, say, who's actually won elections in swing states like, I don't know, John Ossoff or Mark Kelly or Andy Bashir or Alyssa Slotkin or somebody who's actually won in one of those swing states? Or are they going to scratch their ideological itch and move hard left, as the Labor Party did with Jeremy Corbyn, as Democrats did with George McGovern in 1970, which unfortunately could snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, the stakes are
Right.
huge in 2026. They are exponentially, existentially greater in 2028. And if Democrats convince themselves that embracing the democratic socialists of America is a good idea, I think they're in for a rude awakening. I think this is a huge gift to the National Republican Senate Committee. And I think that when you see tens of millions of dollars of Oppo research aimed at Democrats trying to tie them to this, I think the people will recognize that this is as dangerous for Democratic prospects of winning elections as the defund the police issue was a few years ago. We now almost universally recognize this. And yet, in one of these primaries after another, we have people who want to defund the police, abolish prisons, open the border, abandon Ukraine, abandon NATO, defund the Pentagon, and take positions way outside the mainstream. I mean, capitalism is in is in a crisis right now. That does not mean that swing voters are going to embrace government seizure of the means of production. If anything,
Right.
we
No,
should
I
have
don't think.
learned how
But
dangerous it is to give that much. I mean, imagine a state in which the government controlled the means of production, but that state was run by a Donald Trump. I
well,
want
but
people to think about that.
right. But I would say Donald Trump has seized shares of Intel. I mean, he's
Yes,
done a number of seizing the means of production style takeovers of government of companies. So he comes much closer to actual
I agree.
communism. But yeah,
And is
I
praising
mean,
communists.
right. And but I do think that the importance of getting the middle cannot be on. That said, I also
Or-
think that two things can be true, right? That like that there are I think we have to get through the midterms before anyone starts thinking about 2028 because there are going to be a lot of unique problems that Trump is going to create for these midterms and he's just
Well, I agree with that.
and he's
Yeah.
so unpopular and the thing that makes me the most worried right now is that he is not running like someone who is worried about winning, which could be
No.
good but could be bad.
Well, and I admit this, I'm in the alarmist camp that says
Yeah.
that, we know what he's done in the past with January 6th. He's already done it. We know what
Yeah.
he's saying about the elections. And this time, unlike previous elections, he's put in place all of government infrastructure to not only interfere with the elections, but maybe, to look, I mean, words are extreme, but this is a man that actually tried a coup in the past.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do think that we ought to worry about that, which is why this is perhaps not the moment for the Democratic Party to abandon the normies.
Right. I mean, we're go back and forth on this one conversation, but because we're friends, we are having
Yeah.
this conversation in a good way. But I would also say, like, that is true. But I mean, again, I think there is a sense in which, and again, we'll see how this goes, right, in the midterms. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, Angie Craig, I
Yeah.
think, is more of an intellectual conversation than like a Dr. El Said, who we've seen a lot of polls with him ahead, and he is running against someone who lives in Florida, Mike Rogers, who has run before. I mean, I mean, the polls we've seen have him ahead. There's a Fox News poll that has him behind, but the last poll I just saw has him at 45 and 39. But I would also say one other thing I want to end with is in that Florida election with Byron Donalds was not able to crack 50% in
No.
Florida.
And you know what? David Jolly is a quality candidate who's been running a quality campaign. And so maybe and so I mean one of the things that we have not seen lately is people who've been willing to split the ticket, vote for Republicans on one issue and Democrats on another, which makes me worried about her dragging David Jolly down. But in Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, who's the Democratic candidate for governor, has a very, very solid lead. She's, leading among independents. She's got a solid lead over the MAGA Republican for governor. El Said, however, is underwater with independents. And I think it's that delta, that gap between people willing to vote for the Democrat for governor, but at this point not willing to vote for the Democrat for senator, that you need to keep our eye on. Because the real tragedy would be that Michigan votes strongly for a Democratic governor, but the Democratic candidate for Senate falls short. And even a one-vote majority for Donald Trump in the Senate could change the trajectory of the next decade, quite frankly. Talking about the Supreme Court.
For sure. Charlie Sykes, will you come back?
Anytime. Happy birthday.